tried and failed to type this in so many times now that now I have to do it. There we go.
Somebody else did it.
Oh, either way, I still got it. So there you go.
Hi, Jet.
There you go. All right, so dragging turns. All right.
Yeah, the my chat called it Dragon D's.
Dragon D's.
Somebody,
Dragon D's what?
Dragon D's nut. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. I got there. Okay, cool. So yeah. So you pulled a 6-1 in the Swiss into losing to the winner in the top 8, right?
Yep, that's correct. And I was my 4th land drop away in both games 2 and 3 from killing him just on the spot. So I couldn't draw a 4th land in either 2 or 3 against him. He was playing Hammer Time.
Yeah, that's correct.
I blew up every creature he played. I interacted with him in all the ways. The games ended on turn 7 and 8.
Yeah. I mean, that's not surprising. Hammer Time is a very like they can grind if you push them to it. Like they stay in the game a long time, which is part of the reason that deck is good. Is it's got the turn 2 kills. But like our deck, it can also kill you on turn like 9.
Yeah, it was a little bittersweet. I was a little tilted at the time, but it's better now.
Yeah, I mean it should be. I mean you can't win everything all day long, right? I mean,
says who?
Exactly. Well, you can, but then like as I just did, like I just 5-0'd a league, right? And then I 2-0'd the beginning of that one, and then 0-3'd the back half. And you saw the end of that game, and the previous game against Blue Red Prowess is exactly the same, where they just
part of the reason we all play this game is because variance is what makes it interesting, right?
Exactly. So you stuck with the Emrakul. I chickened out on the relevance of the Emrakul. Did you bring it in at any point during your whole day?
I did actually twice. I did. So basically, my main philosophy about the deck is that it's every part of the buffalo, right? Everything should work,
right?
In whatever the plan is for the specific matchup. So part of the problem is that I'm still undecided on Flame Slash, Fry, and Magnetic Sinkhole. I boarded them all in different circumstances and found them all useful. Like Fry and Magnetic Sinkhole came in against both the Blue Moon deck and control decks against control decks, so that I had something. I also brought in the Magnetic Sinkhole against Grixis Death Shadow, but I never would have done that with Flame Slash just to kill Gurmag Angler.
Sure.
So I still don't know which ones I like, but Fry killed a Relzeric today. Magnetic Sinkhole killed 2 Teferis. It just, the cards all do stuff, and so I don't know which I like best.
Yeah, it's funny because I ran into GDS as well, but they weren't playing any Gurmag Anglers because they were playing Scourge of the Skyclaves and Luris. So yeah, and that's one of those things too, which I don't know if you've had a similar experience to me, but I haven't seen GDS in forever. Nobody's playing it in leagues, but people still do whip it out for challenges, and it's one of those things of I just wasn't I knew it would be a poor matchup, just like Blue Red Prowess is. It's just anything with a fast clock and Stubborn Denials or Spell Pierces can be really bad for this deck.
Yeah, it turns out Monastery Swiftspear is maybe the best creature in Modern.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, the jury's still out, but they're leaning in a direction.
Yeah, it applies so much pressure. And every matchup, the Obosh Red deck is the deck I lost to in round 7.
Right.
I lost to him thinking, I was 5-betting myself a little bit, hey, I'm locked for top 8, I don't need to show him anything if I don't have to. So he played a Blood Moon in game 1, and then I just scooped to it.
Right.
And then in game 2, he played a Blood Moon again, and I Ether Gusted it, and then tried to get there, and he had removal. He was playing the Obosh Red deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Firebolt, Soulscar Mage, Bone Crusher, Season Pyromancer, all that stuff.
Yeah. And they play 4 Blood Moons. So
yes, they do.
They're mono red. It sucks, but So I had a Prismari command in my hand, and he didn't see it in game one. He didn't see it in game two to that point, and I just thought, like, is there any amount of percentage points I gain here by not like trying to command and get there anyway when I'm at like 6 life, and he is going to resolve that Blood Moon next turn. So I just scooped it up again, knowing like, hey, it doesn't matter. I'm top 8 either way.
I mean, I don't hate that choice.
Yeah.
Like, you were 6-0 to that point, so it's really not.
But the back to the Emrakul. Sorry, I kind of got sidetracked.
Oh, it's all good. I mean, it was all good information, right? All good information.
So I brought in the Emrakul a couple of times. I brought in the Emrakul against the red-white suppression field ghostly prison.
Oh, you ran into Ice 9 deck?
Yeah, Ice 9 was my round 1 opponent.
Oh, wow. Okay, I ran into Mordekaiser. That's so funny. We ran into people who are very prolific for like super off-meta decks.
Yeah. It was not fun.
Ice 9 is super stressful. But Renin 6 is amazing against them if you're slightly lucky.
My problem was that in game 2 he resolved 3 suppression fields, and I thought to myself, man, I really wish I would have put just like a couple of enchantment hate cards.
Yeah, Rip Apart being, in my opinion, probably the best one that we could be playing.
I do also like Rip Apart because I think that it's very flexible.
Right. No, that's part of the reason why, right? Is that it does a little bit of everything in a really good way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The problem with Rip Apart, so if we want to talk about some structural potential for the deck, I'm not a huge fan of putting in another basic land, but if I was going to, it would probably be a plain so that we could play those cards, or it would be a forest if we were going to put in some kind of green enchantment removal and artifact removal. But the downside of most of those things is one, you're going to slow down sometimes your Dwarven Mines, and two, they don't cast the double blue spells, and all of the spells that are double pipped in this deck are double blue.
Right. I also thought about just cutting the mountain, thinking self, how often do we fetch mountain? And then I thought about the prowess matchups, and I went, oh, every goddamn time. So I don't think that you can cut it.
It's hard to, that's for sure. I mean, I will waffle back and forth over, like, is it good to just like fetch shock right away, deploy spells, and sometimes that is the right move, and then sometimes there's the other ones where you want to go as conservatively as possible, and it really just depends on what the mixture of your hand is.
Yeah, I also found that I've gained some percentage points against Skyclave decks, Scourge of the Skyclave decks, by just being super conservative, like just leaving my fetch lands in play, not doing anything with them until I want to go for it.
For me, they always have a Tarmogoyf first, so it's not a concern because they always hit me at least once, and I'm like, okay, well, the Scourge is coming down one way or the other, and I just have to get ahead of them. And it's crazy to me that like Jund Shadow and similar decks are mostly like a 50-50 matchup.
Well, Zach, we all know that you are exceedingly unlucky.
I mean, yeah.
But B, it's like those decks are just like, they're such grind fests, and they have good enough interaction that they don't have to use on anything else we play to just stop us from trying to combo. And then that leaves them like in these long drawn out situations where we have to be the proactive deck to like handle what they're doing, and that's a bad place to be, I think, when we're playing this
sure
style.
No, I just normally find against those decks in 2 out of 3 of the games they'll tap down somewhere where they maybe shouldn't, or they just feel like they don't have another option, and then I just kill them. Exactly, or I don't, because sometimes you flip and you miss.
And I it's kind of a similar idea. It's like you grind them down until they don't feel afraid of you anymore, right?
Right.
For it. Yeah, I felt the same way about playing against like the control matchups. So against the Blue Moon deck, I think I avenged you.
You did.
Of your loss.
His name was like BN Fafl something. It was a bunch of consonants.
Yes, yeah. So I boarded out the lightning bolts.
And you said the growth spirals.
The growth spirals. I boarded in the Mystical Disputes. I boarded in the Fry, the Magnetic Sinkhole, all 3 Veil of Summers.
Yeah.
And I boarded out I boarded out 1 Renin 6.
Oh, really?
And I just thought to myself, like, this game is going to go to turn 12. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Oh, no, they're never going to kill you early unless they just play a Blood Moon and lock you out. But other than that.
Right. And I think I may have even brought in 1 Aether Gust over one of the remans as like a, well, if I have to. But my main plan was just like, I'm going to Prismari Command to win if they Blood Moon. That's the whole plan.
Right.
And so what I did was I just waited and we stared at each other, not doing anything. And then as soon as I could start making dwarves, I just like aggressively brought dwarves and started attacking their face with them. And usually somewhere around 10 life, what ends up happening is you attack with 2 or 3 dwarves and they like pause for a second.
And then they go snap, whatever.
Or they let it happen. And then in your second main phase, you're just like cast Time Warp. And then they start freaking the fuck out every turn after that.
Right.
They're like, oh God, these are going to kill me. And so they start being a bit more proactive. And usually that's where I can like sneak in like one little counterspell fight to finally get there. And I got there against the Blue Moon player both times by just like having a fight over stuff. And then on my turn, casting Velomachus and attacking them.
Yeah, see, I had a very similar matchup against that player where I got them to 6 in game 1. But then the same kind of fight that happened turned out in their favor. They killed my dwarves and then they cast a Blood Moon and I just died.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where I was sitting there going, I have the mana. I just don't have another remand. I don't have another anything. Like I can't do it here. So
yeah, and I also too, just as I was thank you very much, Umad. I really appreciate you guys all being supportive and stuff. It's awesome. But yeah, I was like super aggressive with all my turn spells. Like I kind of just threw them at them.
I am too for the most part with Savor the Moment. It was a real eye opener moment for me, and I wrote about it in this respect. But I think I could emphasize it more in an edit that Savor the Moment, if you have a Renin 6 in play, is like, it's not acceptable. It's like very, very reasonable.
Yeah. +1 loyalty is huge.
Yeah. And another land drop and another card draw. Like, it's like, even though you're not doing any of your untapping, it really, like, when you think of the card Explore, because people joke about Time Warp as Explore, and it's like, well, obviously it's like Explore, but with like the free mechanic, right? Like a Rewind or Time Spiral, right? But Savor the Moment really is like 3 mana Explorer, but that's really good enough a lot of the time. It's weird, it's crazy, but it's like it really is.
Against both of the players I played against, that because I played twice. I played against Gabe playing the Valakut.
The 5-color BTL shift
thing. Yeah. And then I played it again later. But against both of them, I just played. On turn 2, played a Renin 6. On turn 3, cast a Savor the Moment. And the card just says 3 mana, draw a card, play a land, add 1 loyalty to all your planeswalkers. Like, it's very strong.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's Benlunt. Yeah, that's right. BN Lunt. That's right. That was it. Ace of Spades. Savor the Moment with Planeswalkers amazing. I mean, and that was one of the things that I had as a problem is I know, and I wrote about it to this effect, turn 2 Renin 6 is so good, I have mulled to 4 and won games with it. It is ridiculous in this deck. And I just couldn't find it today, and that's how it goes sometimes. But I had other games that were phenomenal where I didn't. Turn 2 Growth Spiral with an Indomitable in your hand. I mean, I'll keep that with 2 lands sometimes and get there on turn 4.
Yeah, absolutely. The only card I didn't board at all today was Ceremonious Rejection.
Yeah.
I still felt like I wanted it. I even thought about boarding it in against Goblins just as a way of handling their turn 1 play when I was on the play.
I mean, I think that's really excessive when you're playing 3 Prismari commands, but I mean, I understand the instinct. I would highly recommend the Cleansing Wildfires I've been playing. In the last 2 days or so since I wrote the article and did the full rework of the sideboard for me. The Cleansing Wildfires, of which I'm playing 3. Um, uh, I have brought them in against E-Tron and Greentron to very good effect multiple times. Especially Greentron. I mean, Greentron wasn't a bad matchup for us, but it helps keep that one safe. But E-Tron, it's quite good. Knocking down either an Eldrazi Temple or a Tron piece is just a big deal. You only need a little bit of extra space to get the win sometimes.
Yeah, I've always kind of been of the opinion that fighting E-Tron over their mana is a lot less fruitful than fighting them over their spells, especially when most of the time we can ignore their spells until they try to remove one of our creatures. But
sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played against it. I've played against it, I think, maybe 4 or 5 times, and I feel like I'm 50-50, and every game is super close.
I'm 50-50, but the 2 losses were total shutouts against Tunneling Cat, and Tunneling Cat knows the deck you're playing better than you do as soon as you sit down. It's really freaky. It was great because like the first time I played against her, I was like, oh, I'm surprised you didn't get Grafdigger's Cage, and she was like, oh, well, it doesn't beat your indomitable creativity. I was like, oh yeah, it doesn't. But actually, to that effect, yes, it does, because it beats the spell casts off Velomachus. So
it does beat the spellcast, but it doesn't stop the dragon. And
well, they I mean, again, other times they let the dragon resolve and they just dismembered it, like they're playing Dismember. So
Dismember is an ass whipping all around for this deck. I really wish that Velomachus was just a 5/6, man. That'd be way easier.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm glad it's not, right? Like, I'm glad it's not more busted than it is, because
it's really good.
It's really good.
Greentron, I'm EXO against Greentron, and I've never felt I've had.
I don't think I've lost to Greentron yet.
I've had Greentron resolve the 10 mana Ulamog on me, and I didn't care. Like it just
I've had a couple games where that's happened. I mean, on the flip side too, I mean, I've really enjoyed the flying by the seat of your pants nature sometimes of the Velomachus turns, of like, you're like, well, I've done the math, so I've drawn 2 time walks already, so I'm like 60% to hit the next one, and then you hit like a Prismari command, and sometimes you're like, wait a minute, if I make a treasure, I can cast the Savor of the Moment in my hand and go again. And it's crazy the number of times that like Savor the Moment and Growth Spiral bridge you to what you need. Oh my god!
Like, I think that's the best part about this versus the Fires deck. Is that it's the all part of the Buffalo thing again, right? It's like you don't waste anything. Like every Velomachus attack, if it didn't hit a turn, it did something. Whereas in the other decks, it
my god,
usually doesn't.
The Fires deck was so bad for me. Again, and obviously the results are going to come out this weekend. People are going to start talking about them, etc. But I think Raging Tilt Monster is a very good player. And I'm not surprised that they made 22nd with it, but I'm glad you top 8'd with this deck, because I think this version of it really is the better one, and you've been able to at least show off what it can do at the best. So I mean, it's actually funny, because we were talking about, I think Remand is really, 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 really good, and I wouldn't want to play without it, but Remand is one of the few things that we're playing that when Velomachus hits it, you're like, oh, rats. Like, I hit like Lightning Bolt and Remand, and that's not good enough this game.
Yeah, I really wish that it was, like a modal spell that had Remand's text and or do something, but
Remand is, I mean, it's phenomenal. I'm not complaining about Remand, because there are a few matchups like Greentron, right? Like Greentron, so many of the games become a joke, because they're like, here's my turn, like, here's my 7 mana spell, and you're like, Remand it, and then go off on my turn and kill you. Okay, nice game. And like, sometimes, not only would Mana Leak would do the same thing maybe, but you wouldn't also draw a card, because sometimes you go Remand and then the next turn Remand it again, and they're just sitting there spinning their wheels being like, man, I sure wish I could play this 6 mana spell.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think the Greentron's so good, is that we're on very similar plans of just like, hey, we're both all in on this turn, but our deck actually kills them as opposed to demoralizing them.
Right. Yeah.
As a longtime Greentron player.
Really?
I've played Green Tron for years. I have Japanese black border Tron lands. Like I
Oh,
love
nice.
Tron.
I just bought up Tron just a couple months ago for the first time in a while, but E-Tron stuff mostly because I'm much more of a mid-range player, and so E-Tron speaks to me way more than Green Tron ever did. I
Yeah,
just
the thing about Green Tron that I loved is a few years back now, Seth Manfield wrote an article about the math on how to mulligan and what you're looking for playing Green Tron.
Mhm.
And I read it, and it just like resonated with me really hard. And so now it's like I don't, that frustrating feeling of like, oh, I'm playing Green Tron and I have to mulligan 9 times, every round or whatever. It just doesn't feel bad when you just know what it is you're looking at, what you're looking for, and that you just never need to have action in your hand. All you need to do is make Tron. If you
Right.
can make Tron, the rest will happen.
Right.
And it changes your win percentage so drastically, just understanding what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. And I think that's true with this deck too, because a number of times I've had to sit there and go, this hand isn't good enough for modern. That's usually the way I frame that thing to myself. And admittedly, like what I like about this deck is it has the taking turns sort of mid-range shell. So there are some sort of middle of the road hands that are okay. That you speculate on. And I did that in again, this league was a 2-3. It wasn't a huge success, but most of that came down to how nutty my opponent's draws were. And I usually feel pretty confident about my keeps, or sometimes I'll keep something that I go like, okay, this is like not so strong, but I'm in the dark and I'm on the play. And more often than not, this deck has felt like it's rewarded. I don't know, just like a good range of keeps actually.
Yeah, I also think that the other thing is that, again, like the post sideboard plans are all pretty straightforward. It's like, okay, like for instance, in my previous discussions, like against or for UMAD against Yellow Hat, I was just like, okay, he's a grindy control player. He's maybe the greatest of all time as a grindy control player, right?
He's up there.
And what is he going to want to do? Well, he's going to want to take every 2 for when he can, and he's going to be very greedy. Like he's going to try to milk every ounce, thinking especially in game 1 that it's like a mirror match. And so I got to just like kind of play into that, knowing that like I don't need to land a Teferi against him. I don't need to do, like I just need to interact with him once on his turn, and then untap and kill him.
Right.
And that's just what I did both games.
Nice. I mean, that's phenomenal.
The game 2 kill, if you guys can go back and watch that, or as you med saw, the game 2 win, I soul read him and it felt so good.
Because you knew he had the lightning bolt, you said.
Yeah, I knew he had the lightning bolt, but so it was like several turns together, like strung together.
Right.
So like I had a remand in my hand. I let the Ren and 6 resolve that he played.
Yeah.
He plussed it and got back the fetch land, and I just went like, okay, I'm just going to Ether Gust it when he cracks the fetch next turn.
Right.
And so then he played the fetch, cracked it, and I Ether Gusted it to shuffle it away. And then apparently my buddy was watching it and told me afterwards, he was like, did I mess up? Nah, it's fine. I'll just take my 2 for 1 and then cast his Omnath, leaving 1 mana up. And I was just like, okay, so he drew his card with the Omnath. He has a lightning bolt to stop my creativity. But I'll just get another dwarf, and then that's that. So like I just knew what he was going to do through that whole turn cycle.
Right. And I think that's another thing too, where you have some of the same habits that I do. I think is that this 5-color control deck is new and on the scene, and you probably know there's approximately 2 versions of it, right?
I've played Nassif's version many times. I love Nassif's version.
Right. And he's playing the Reclaimers. But there is the other version that's playing Ren and 6. But the point is, like, there's these 2 different versions, but most of them play a number of lightning bolts and a number of Path to Exiles, and that's a great thing to be able to just sit there and go, I know they have 1 mana interaction, and I know it's very unlikely to be able to kill the dragon.
Yeah. He left up Ragrum Triumph, so I know it was good. Yeah.
Well, Ragrum could be Path.
Or not Ragrum, I'm sorry.
Ketria.
Got
it. Yeah.
The rug one.
Yeah, the teamer one. Yeah, exactly. So,
my brain's going.
Yeah. So no white. Yellow Hat's not on Reclaimers? Wasn't he last week? I swear I played his leg.
No, Yellow Hat's on the Ren and 6 one.
Really? I thought I played his deck from last week, and he was playing the Reclaimers. But maybe I'm wrong. Either way, there's
I played
two.
against both today, and Yellow Hat played Ren and 6 for sure.
Right. Because you said he played Ren and 6 in the game you were playing. But anyway, both versions do exist, and they have their relative merits. Although I think Ren and 6 is probably the better version overall, at least to my taste, just because everyone's out for creatures, because of all the prowess decks, and
playing a 1-mana 1/2 is not good enough, I don't think.
Right. Thanks for the follow there, King Magic 95. Did you have the same experience today that I had? Did you face a single prowess deck in the entire event? Because I didn't.
The Obosh deck.
No. I mean like the real prowess decks, like red white, blue red.
Nope.
No, that's crazy. There was a modern showcase challenge today, right?
Yes, there was.
So I have a feeling a lot of the hyper competitive players were probably playing that. Because for a Saturday challenge, I thought the number 126 or whatever it was a little bit low. Although I looked at the list and Yellow Hat and TSP Yendrick were in here, so it wasn't a soft event. Doom Switch, tons of people.
It was not. There's a ton of good people in this event.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I played against T-Moon my final round and didn't quite get there.
Yama played this one too.
Yeah. I ended the final match with the perfect the final game of the final match was the perfect hand to sum me up in competitive events. I was 4-2, final game, final match. My opponent had played an Ashiok, so I could never fetch my second blue mana, and my hand was Saver, Time Warp. I was 18 cards into my deck.
Jesus. Man. Like I said, it's known, Zach, that you are exceedingly unlucky. So
I'm super unlucky.
Anybody should take your results.
I played a Xerox copy of the almost we had, I think it was 3 cards different between me and Jiggy Wiggy, and he 7-0'd a challenge, and I 4-3'd the same one. I think it was. It's just. Oh my god! It's a good time.
I also saw earlier, let me see, who was it that said it? Somebody brought up Chandra.
Oh, Lost and Sandy. Yeah. I mean, I
would love Chandra over Jace.
Right.
But Chandra doesn't beat Infinite Life.
Yeah, and I mean, I think my biggest problem with Chandra is, what's the right way to say this? The reason I like Ren and 6 above anything else in that slot is how cheap it is. And the only reason I like Teferi Time Raveler at 3 is how brutal of a shutout that it is in so many matchups that it's worth the extra mana. Because with all the things that this deck is trying to do and the way that you're trying to win games, having to play your threat at sorcery speed, if it costs more than 3, it's really tough to sell me on it in Modern. Because in the control matchups, you need every extra mana you have to fight when you try to deploy your threats a lot of the time. And in the other matchups, you need them to come down faster and be better. And Chandra's just not it, because she just she comes down, she kills one creature, and then she gets picked off by a Labradart. In fact, I don't think I've activated a Jace the Mind Sculptor to any relevant effect in this deck, other than once I've already had infinite turns.
Yeah, I have used Jace to set up my turns for Velomachus. I have used it. I have used it to just plus and beat Heliod without being able to go infinite while they were handling my Ren 6s and stuff. Jace
is one of the worst cards in this deck. That's how I want to say it. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. And if we didn't have to play it, I wouldn't.
I agree 100%. I hate it.
It turns out that the showcase challenge, by the way, the finals were a Heliod mirror match. I think a lot of the people playing that event were playing Heliod.
Right, and I've also had really, really good success with this deck against Heliod.
So have I. And again, we were talking about one of the other worst quote unquote cards in this deck is Remand, but it's so good against Heliod because all of their relevant cards cost 3 or 4. And it's just the tempo blowout into kill them is so good.
Yeah. Also, too, Prismari Command has been super good against them.
I know. That's why I brought it up to 3, because the first couple times I played this deck, I was like, man, this is so good. I want it more often. And not just against them. I mean, it's good against everything. And creating the treasure token and the loot for 2. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's really, really strong. Also, too, I find I close out games a lot with it, where I like combine it off of a Velomachus with a lightning bolt to just do 10 out of
for an
nowhere
extra Velomachus hit. Yeah.
Just like super sick.
Yep. Or you, again, as I mentioned before, you hit it off of Velomachus and you use it to give you the 1 extra mana to do something else you need to do.
Yep. Yeah, there's so many cool lines in this deck, and I got super lucky. Like the idea of this deck started off where I was like, "Hey guys, there's this cool interaction between Velomachus and the card Time Warp."
Yeah.
That's how the whole conversation started on my stream. 2 weeks ago now? It was like you attack with Velomachus and then you Time Warp and then you attack again. Like that was the whole pitch, you know?
Right. Well, no, and I mean, I think that's the way I set it up in my article, as I was like, wouldn't that be cool? But there's no way you're gonna cast a 7 mana spell in Modern. I mean, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, I cast it more than I cast Chase.
Right. No, I agree with you. And that's the crazy thing about this deck is like, you got it to the point where you figured out, like, you know what my red, white, blue deck needs? A green card.
Yeah.
Because, Ren and 6 is really going to tie the room together.
So I actually started this deck off with no white mana in it. And I was just like, we'll just hit Velomachus and that's the way it's going to be, And
right.
So
well, I mean, there's almost no white spells in it. It's just Teferi and Velomachus, right?
So the initial iterations of the deck, the first thought was like, I'll play Ren and 6, I'll play Rowan, the new one, the new Rowan.
Ooh.
Yeah, okay. Right, hold on. Let me finish, okay?
Jeez. No. I mean, take your story. I'm just like, ooh.
It wasn't good. I'm just saying this is my original thought.
Yeah.
I was like, and then I'll also play, like these taking turns cards and Fires of Invention, and then like, plussing Rowan after an extra turn. Man, like you ultimate it immediately, and then you can just start taking 2 turns at a time. It's so good. It's the Fires of Invention. Like they all left immediately, and then we were left with, well, I have lightning bolts, I have remands, I have Red and 6, I have these 8 taking turns cards, some creativities and dragons. Now what? And then I just was like, well, let's speed it up, get these growth spirals in here, and then I don't even remember what I had instead of Prismari Command, but that changed immediately also. And then we cut some number of bad cards, 1 Jace and 1 something else, just to play Teferi, because it was like, well, I need to add white mana so I can cast this stupid card every now and then, the dragon. And then it just kept getting better and better and better.
Yeah, and again, I cannot state how frequent it is that you end up casting the dragon. I mean, it's nuts. Like it happens to me like twice a league on average.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah, and it's because Ren and 6 is picking up lands for you, and the lands that you're playing are turning into dwarves and the whole 9. So it's
I also would say for anybody out there, don't be afraid to just leave a Dwarven Mine in your deck, because the Prismari Command helps you so much. So just like put down dwarves and attack your control opponents. Just attack them.
Yeah. And if anyone is somehow not aware, I wrote a gigantic article about this that looks like this. There will be probably some edits after this weekend, but it goes over all of this in great depth. So it's quite the document. In the tips and tricks area, I definitely have, there it is, from the inspiration of Freak himself, is the dwarves singing hi ho. Because it really is like you put 2 or 3 of them into play sometimes against these control decks, and they're like, oh,
yeah, wait, that's gonna kill me. Stop.
I don't want to fatal push one of those. That sucks.
Or even better, I had a blue-white control player the other night.
Path it.
Path my dwarf token. It felt so good.
Path to exile in this economy?
Yeah, he path to exiled my dwarf token. he was like staring it down, right? He was just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do about this, and like pathed it, and then like snapped and pathed it, like went to go path the other one, and then like decided he wasn't going to, and just blocked and left one of them in play, and then I untapped and hardcast Velomachus, and I could see the pain on my opponent, through the screen.
Oh yeah, you can feel it sometimes. It's yeah.
Like, if only I still had that path to exile.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I mean so let's hop over to some final thoughts, because I might get up in about 8 hours and play this deck all over again.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So your sideboard, Ceremonious Rejection, yay or nay?
I'm still I'm still out on it. I actually think I may just want to switch it over to like 2 more Flame Slashes and keep my 1 Fry, 1 Sinkhole.
Sure. And I think I was playing 2 Flame Slashes, and I would be comfortable playing more, especially with, as that league demonstrated, it's possible Blue-Red Prowess is on an upswing again. And that deck is going to be brutal for us. So
yeah, and both Fry and Sinkhole are good against every form of Teferi, both 3 and 5 mana, or 4 mana if you ever run across that, I guess.
Yeah.
It's good against Jace. It's good against
Stormwing Entity.
It's insanely good against all of the white creatures in the format, like with Heliod Company, with Hammer Time, with like any of the Stoneforge decks. Like, it's just very good.
Yeah, I never would have thought about bringing it in against Hammer Time, just because the Ornithopters and such, but it's definitely something you could do.
I brought it in against Hammer Time, and both times that I cast it against them was just to kill the 2 mana guy that says whenever they play an equipment, draw a card.
Yeah.
The Ornithopters just die to everything else, so.
No, yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's just one of those things where if you were to top deck it, it'd be like, oh well. But yeah. I mean, again, unlikely. Emrakul, you sold on the Emrakul?
I am still on the Emrakul. There are quite a few decks that, like, it's sad, but there's quite a few decks still that their plan is like, I will bounce it, I'll bounce your thing, or I'll tap your thing, or I will path to exile your thing and to beat you. And Emrakul just says, nah, dog, I'm good.
Yeah. It definitely helps against the dismember matchups, right? Like, you can
huge against those also, yeah. And a lot of times when you resolve this card against Eldrazi, Eldrazi-tron, they just look at it for a minute and then they concede. So
yeah, Sinkhole is definitely a card I'm a fan of, for sure.
I also hate Mill and people named Caustic who play Mill. That's just a shout out for Caustic because he's in my chat all the time.
Oh no, it's all good. He's
I don't like Mill. I don't like the fact that I can get milled over like randomly for 4 or 5 cards, a Caustic, and then have them extraction me, and then I'm screwed.
Yeah,
so I like just having Emrakul and beating them.
Yeah. Beating what is the card? The one that the extraction that Niv plays, Unmoored Ego. Beating Unmoored Ego multiple times already by hitting infinite turns has been the best. When they're just like, I will extraction your Velomachus, you're like, okay. It feels like every time my opponents ever bother to do that, they slow down by so much that I just take infinite turns and kill them. They're like, oh. Shit.
I had similar things. I had somebody in the center taste say Indomitable Creativity, and then I just untapped and cast.
Yes. I'm praying for the day they take my creativities. It's like when I was playing the Through the Breach Emrakul deck, and sometimes they would name Emrakul, but the other times they would name Through the Breach. I'm like, see, now that's the name. Because leaving the Emrakuls in my deck is not a problem for you, but it is a problem for me, because I don't even want to discard them.
Yeah. I don't want to draw it. I don't want to discard it. I don't want anything to do with it.
Exactly. Whereas, like, at least with Through the Breach, I can loot it away with the Prismari commands, but I can't do that with the Emrakul, because it's going to shuffle my graveyard and mess with my Snapcasters in that deck. Obviously, not in this one. And then the last thing is Remand. So I think if this deck was to go in a slightly different direction that was similar to where it's in, that Remands would become either Farseeks or Explorers.
I think that they would be explorers because
Yeah.
the card draw is so relevant, as well as synergizing with Ren and Six. Like the
Sure.
two go together so well.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Farseek is it's basically guaranteed what you're looking for, whereas with Explorer sometimes it's a little weak if your hand is a little weak. Um, like Farseek is guaranteed going to put a land into play, whereas like sometimes you play a Growth Spiral, on a week 2,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, I didn't hit, and then you draw your card for turn, you're like, oh, I still didn't hit. Awkward. Um,
Yeah,
but
and
those are bad hands anyway, so it's not really.
my only concern with Farseek is just the turns. Like there are so many turns where you're on 5 or 6 mana already, right? And you're like, or I'm sorry, 4 or 5 mana, and you're like, man, if I cast this Growth Spiral and I draw a fetch land, I can just still kill them right now.
Right. True.
I don't know. It's
No,
probably not
that's true.
to matter.
No. That is relevant. And so Growth Spiral and Explore, if you hit an untapped land on your turn and then you play it, they effectively cost 1 mana, and Farseek can never do that. So you're right. And in a Ren 6 deck that's playing 24 lands, that's probably an okay thing to do.
El Rodeo-san, you should definitely play this deck. It is super fun.
It is really fun.
It's way deeper than it looks like on paper. I joked with my cousin about this deck after I built it and even got to this version of it. I was like, like where we had the Teferis and all that stuff. I was like, yeah, you know what? It was the day before I 5-0'd. I was like, I still don't know if this deck is good. and here I am still playing it. So.
Yeah, no, this is one of those lightning in a bottle situations. Once the first time I played this deck, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is really, really something."
Yeah, but then you think to yourself, like, did I just get lucky? Like, this can't be that good. Because then you look at it,
but like,
I
mean, for me, I feel like I know what I likes, and I didn't like, but I mean, the fact that the first one was like a 4-1 that just felt like so easy. It felt like every loss was like a tight loss. Like the deck never fails to do its own thing to an appreciable level. Like my worst case scenarios, usually I still feel like, I think with one top deck I could win this game. Like that's crazy to like kind of always feel like you're like, if I were to top deck X, I could win the game right now. It's like, wow. That's
the game goes beyond turn 4. It feels like every game or every single draw step could be like game changer.
Yeah. And it's like because Indomitable Creativity with Fetch Lands of Dwarven Mind kind of gets to be a 1-card combo, but then all the time warps with the Ren and 6 in particular are also strong.
It all just harmonizes so well, and. Very similar to some of the other 1-card combos in like Uro plus having a lot of different named lands in your deck to make zombies.
Feel of the Dead.
It does kind of feel that way, right? It's like you said, like, hey, if I draw a fetch land, this card in my hand that currently doesn't do anything becomes win the game. Sick,
Yeah, exactly. And again, like one of the things that I did when I wrote this up, and someone came into the chat the other night and was kind of sassy about it. Is like, oh, I just don't like how inconsistent this deck is. And like, you just go look at this, and you know what? You're right. I can look at these numbers and say, when you attack with the Velomachus and you have, let's say, a lot of the time you'll have 6 time warps in your deck, right? And you'll go, okay, that's a 63% chance to hit. Okay, you know what? Maybe that's not that great, but at the same time, it feels a hell of a lot better than trying to top deck a TBR. When you're playing Death Shadow, which I'm not a big fan of playing Death Shadow. I'm just saying, like, there's so much variance in Magic in general, and being able to look at, like, I'm going to set up this thing, and these are the numbers I'm working with. These are not bad numbers, right?
Yeah. Also, too, 48 is like your best case scenario turn 4 or turn 3 getting there, right? Like that's 2 fetch lands and 3 draw steps or something.
I said 3 draws, 1 to 2 fetches, and the creativity pulls a Velomachus out of your deck.
Yeah. Because it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The Velomachus is already 47.
Right. No, but
So,
but
yeah,
also, I mean, the most important thing also is the number of time warps in your deck is a much bigger affecting on this percentage than the number of cards. Each card you're
sure.
adding to your deck is only adding a couple percentage points, whereas each time warp, you can see it goes from 5 to 6 to 9 to 11. I mean, it gets really steep really quick.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is it's like as you talk about lower down in the article, that's super sick. Is that a lot of times you only need the first one to give you a turn.
Right, right, right. And that's the other thing is like having a savor the moment in your hand, as much as we were saying earlier, like sometimes it's good to just spew them in the early game, but sometimes you can sandbag one because you end up with enough mana that you hit one extra turn, and then on that extra turn you're going to have a land drop, and that land drop will mean you can cast the saver you've had stuck in your hand, which means you can miss.
Yeah. It's really it's way more consistent than it looks like. Also, too, that viewer is a the guy who's in my channel.
No,
I
know. I don't want to. I don't want to get into the whole thing.
I joke around with him as well.
Oh, sure. I just.
It's more consistent. It's just a meme at this point, but it is very consistent. The turns where you hit don't feel as bad as you think they will. Very rarely have I been like, if I don't hit right here, I'm dead.
Right.
Like I have to hit and then missed and been dead because of it.
Right.
More likely has been the situation in which I'm like, I attack and I hit and they're dead on the spot than the other way around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and on the other hand too, there's a few decks in Modern that like I was playing against Mordekaiser in round 1. I had to pass the turn with the dragon in play, but I was like, he can't kill it. I know he can't kill it. He can't kill it, and he was sitting there with a Skyclave already in play, Skyclave Apparition. And he couldn't kill it.
Yeah, it's got 5 toughness. That's
and it's above 4 CMC. Nothing kills anything that's above 4 CMC. Nothing. And it's not monocolor. Vanishing Verse won't get it. So like
you have your random boomers playing like the one of Terminate somewhere in their list.
Assassin's Trophy is a card that is reasonably played, but then also post board against most of those decks you're going to have Veil of Summer anyway, and that happened to me literally today where I was like, here's my dragon, and I was holding up the Veil of Summer. I'm like, I'm going for the dragon with the Indomitable. So the one thing I need them not to have here is Bolt. Bolt is the most problematic card, and obviously Bolt is one of the most played cards, but a lot of the decks playing Bolt want to tap out on their turns to try to kill you the most. So it's the less they respect what you're playing, the better for you.
Also, too, we do have a big wow factor right now in the idea that a lot of people don't know what's happening.
No, I agree. I agree. Well, or the deck looks like it's 5-color Scape Shift. This deck,
and then all of a sudden you get creativity.
The thing I try not to show off too early is the Dwarven Mines, because for me, as soon as I see someone playing Dwarven Mine, I'm like, oh, they're doing something janky. I could die any moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go for a little walk. I cannot thank you enough for creating this deck, for putting in the effort, for 5-0ing with this deck, for 5-0ing with this deck again, for streaming this deck, for input on the column, for supporting the thing that I wrote, and congratulations for the 6-0 through the Swiss and your top 8. I mean, wow, great job, man.
6-2 on the day is as I was telling some of my friends earlier today, like it was a little disappointing in the moment, but the more I thought about it, it's a day 2. It's a GP day 2.
Right. No, I mean
nothing to laugh at.
Jiggy had the same run. He 7-0'd through the Swiss, and then he went top 8 and he lost immediately. And winning a top 8, a lot of people will say winning a top 8 is as hard as making the top 8. It's as much of an ask. Yeah, exactly. You are only playing against people who they came on the day with the right deck and the right attitude, and they are ready to play. And it sounds like you put up a fight, so there really isn't anything that you should feel bad about in any way. I mean, and you lost the guy who won the whole thing too, right? That helps. Yeah, I mean, if you needed to, knowing that the guy who beat you beat everyone, that's one of those moments where you're like, yeah, right, and you can.
And I also I do want to tell you guys all too. Thank you guys all in your chat and Uzak especially for embracing the deck and being super supportive and loving about it, and also just being as vehement as I have been about it. Like when I started putting this together, like I said, it was kind of a meme that I was doing with my chat, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, we might be onto something, guys. And then it was like it's been a passion project since. So it's super awesome that everybody else is into it as well.
No, I had a hard time streaming anything that wasn't this deck for the last couple days. Where I have a YouTube channel where I try to put up a variety of content nonstop. So I want to have about one new modern deck every single day, and I try to not to do repeats within like basically a month, but I mean at the very limit within 2 weeks. But I'm definitely gonna have to post this deck again in a league because it's just too much of what I've been playing, and I don't often play a lot of extra magic on top of trying to record what I record and then doing a couple leagues on stream a week where I'm just like jamming with music and not recording for YouTube. But this deck is like, it's been uplifting just because I already love the turns archetype, and adding an explosive combo kill to that is so good. It actually makes me think about the BTL Scapeshift decks or the 4-color money pile decks, in that it has a very, very strong inevitable mid to late game strategy that is going to kill you. Like as the opponent, this deck, if you get to the point where you understand what's happening, it's really scary. And then the fact that any time where you feel like you have to tap out to try to prevent the scary part, the other scary part kills you.
Yeah. It's so cool how this attacks on multiple angles, is good against control decks, is passable against the super aggro decks, is very good against the mid-range decks, like insanely good against the mid-range decks. And then the other combo decks too in Modern, if you look at them, that are doing similar sorts of like I untapped and you died sort of things.
Yeah.
They're not nearly this consistent. You're talking about like your Gristlebrand style of decks, or your Oops All Spells decks. Like they're just not as good. They're just
Well, without Simian Spirit Guide, it certainly feels like they've taken a hit. I would say Blue Red Storm is
Storm is still good, but I don't think that's like a
no. I'm saying Blue Red Storm. If you're gonna take like a combo deck that I think would give us some trouble. Now I have beat them on this deck, but Blue Red Storm is scary. Just because of the way that oftentimes they can play their mana creature and have a remand up, and then they just kill you right after that, and it's not always easy to take them off of that. But I mean,
I do the same thing against them as I do against other control decks. I just decide that we're going to play until turn 12. I bring and like Veil Summers, and I'm like, all right, let's go.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on, Freak.
Thank you, man. No, seriously, you've done so much additional outside work on this deck, and it's really showing.
I mean, I've just been doing what I've been doing, and hopefully I get up tomorrow and play the challenge and I get lucky there. And even if I don't, I can feel good about contributing this. There's also a Reddit post now that I mentioned to you, but if you just go to the Modern subreddit,
oh shit, I didn't use
I just posted my article. I mentioned that you were X and O in the challenge, so if you want to go there and just plug yourself, that's probably a good idea. There it is. It's up to 69 upvotes. Nice. But I believe if my thing is set to...
the results are up there too, and yours is second on hot
right I was about to say on hot. Is this correct? Yeah, this is correct.
Yeah, you're second on hot.
Yeah, so I would recommend you pop in here. Maybe I should edit this and add your stream. Actually, I'm going to do that right now before I go anywhere. But yeah.
Too funny. Thank you so much, man.
Oh, no problem.
Like you said, though, I'm super excited and a little scared. Like, on Monday, like, does Gabe look over the stream results and be like, hey, that guy that beat me in round 3, like, he top 8'd. Let's try out his list.
Well, no, you know what? I honestly have to say, I think it's going to happen, and we just have to be happy that there will be people out there who are going to get a lot of joy from this. Yes, it's going to be better understood, and we just have to be ready to move with the times. Maybe it's not going to be that good online, but maybe it becomes a well-established archetype of its own. I mean, taking turns in various shells is a cult classic. I think the axis that this adds to that shell, while it totally fits exactly into that deck, is maybe going to be a really good entry to that archetype. And I think it's a difficult deck for people to adjust their deck lists to, even if they can adjust their thought to.
Yeah, absolutely. El Rodeo, there's some options here, by the way. The fetch lands that you use just have to be red.
Yeah,
every land in the deck is red. It doesn't matter which fetch lands you use.
Except for the Scalding Tarns are important because there is a basic island, right?
Yeah, there is the basic island, but even sometimes you can kind of get around that if you're more aggressive with making a token with your Prismari commands. But yeah, it is. That was one thing I was trying to do also too, is like bring the budget down. And also, there used to be force negations in the sideboard, and they're just not good.
Right.
They just were never good. Like, we're always playing on our turn when we need the interaction. So,
well,
I would just say mess with the mana base a little bit, El Rodeo, and I think that you'll get it there.
Prismari command is very good, but I think you can cut it while it's overinflated, and I think it is at the moment. I think it's going to come down. I hope so. Yeah, you can mess with the fetch lands. You probably don't need to play Teferi, although it is really good.
The Renin 6 is the one thing I'd say do not skip.
You can't skip on the Renin 6. You can't skip on the Velomachus. You can't skip on the Taking Turn spells. And Indomitable Creativity is pretty cheap, although it's spiked. I think I think it's spiked. Yeah. Let's there it is.
Yes.
There, that's you, by the way. I want to tell you something. This is your fault right here. Look at that.
What is that? Is that like an X times 6? Oh my god.
Times 6, yeah.
That's so
I
huge.
bought a bunch of the cards for this deck, and this is not one of them, by the way.
You should have.
I clearly should have. My bad. I didn't realize.
I bet the paper isn't going up yet, though. You still probably have time.
Yeah. Paper will be good.
So I'll let you go, man.
Yeah.
Again, I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate the love and the support and the contribution as well. My chat, your chat, we have all talked about this deck so much over the last couple of weeks, and that's why it's as tuned as this is, I think.
Cave Dan MTG is here, so the one and only Cave Dan, host of Faithless Brewing, is for the correct number of polymorph effects. Why not 5 or 6? So the one biggest difference is that the other polymorph effects just aren't as good as Indomitable Creativity at what you're trying to do. However, it's not to say that there isn't a benefit to playing more, but I think Freak would probably agree with me in that I've not really had so many games where my problem is trying to draw an Indomitable Creativity and not being able to. It's
quite the opposite for me. I've had games where I'm like, damn it, another Indomitable Creativity, where I don't want to draw one. Like, it's the type of card that you want to draw exactly one of almost every game, and every now and then you want a second one.
And it doesn't get blown out by a single removal spell, and you can target a treasure created off of Prismari command, which none of the other ones can do. So, like, it is unique, even though it's adjacent to those other effects.
Right. Also, too, another thing that came up today, actually, was I played it and was able to beat a Drowned Lock because I upcast it, targeting more things.
Oh, nice.
I just targeted their creatures as well, and they could not use Drowned Lock that I knew about.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's just like there's these edge cases here where, like, yeah, polymorph is just efficient. It's blue, like if it pitches the force of negation if you want to play that, but it's really just not necessary, and extra ones of them don't help. Like, casting it a second time doesn't help. We have 2 Velomachus in our deck. If we were on the Emrakul plan, I think it would be a little better. But like where you'd like have to hit the Emrakul.
Did you at least once today, did you have the moment where you went X equals 2, target 2 dwarfs, and your opponent's like, lightning bolt one of them, and you're like, oh, thank God. At least I'm going to have one more dragon left in my deck. Because sometimes they let it resolve. You have to bring in the 2 dragons and just have one die, and you go, well, if I draw another creativity, I'm screwed.
No, it happened. It happened to Gabe Nassif. Like I said, I played around it, so I knew he only had lightning bolt. He bolted one of them. The creativity went off, and then he went, "Oh!" And my buddy tells me that he read the card afterwards and was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know it still worked. That's crazy."
Yeah, I've never had anyone actually tell me that they thought it was going to stop it. I just think that they, for whatever reason, they think that we want to have 2 cards come in. I think maybe people are used to seeing it out of the red-green Titan Shift decks that play creativity, which I played against today and I stopped them.
Actually, that's another thing too, is that I've never had a problem against Amulet Titan. I've beaten it every time also.
Me too. It's crazy. Dude, in round 4 of my 5-0 just now, in game 3, they had turn 2 Azusa into Karn, and I beat them.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, oh my God. Namer squats. You could not have picked worse timing.
Run, but you can't fly.
Oh wow! Welcome, Raven. Thank you guys all. Hi.
Yeah. I'm just ending a gigantic conversation all about the Velomachus Turn decks with the one and only FreakUNasty, who top 8'd today's challenge with it. I was running the same deck as well. I did not run as hot as him. There's an article on faithlessbrewing.com that you can check out all about it, and this discussion is going to be posted on YouTube. Right now, I'm going to commit myself to looking for someone to raid, and Freak, final thoughts for all of the new people coming in, and plug your stuff, because you really deserve it.
This deck is better than it looks like. It's super fun to play. It is way deeper than it looks like on the surface. And it's really powerful. And
you beat some nerd from France who's playing some kind of nonsense 5-color BTL whatever nonsense deck.
Yeah, I beat Gabe with it today. He said, and I'm going to take this one. This is going to be on my tombstone, guys. He said, "Wow, opponent's deck is sweet. I'm keeping it forever."
And with that, oh no, Squashy's playing Arena. No, Squashy, bye. I saw him say he was playing Pact combo in Historic, and I was like, wow, Demonic Pact? And it's like, no, Tainted Pact with Thassa's Oracle. I'm like, oh
jeez.
So that's way less fun. You just exile your deck and then win the game. I see. That's
historic. I didn't know that was all historically.
I know. Oh, KO Diamonds is streaming. Okay, so we're all heading over to the Abzan mediums. KO Diamonds is awesome, so let's go enjoy. I think he's almost done, but we'll hit him right at the end of his stream with this big ass raid. Thanks, Freak. Thanks, everybody, and I'm sure I will see some or all of you soon enough.
Toodles.
All right. Let me just make sure the raid lands, because sometimes it gets all weird if you turn off your stream too quick. Cool.
Oh yeah,